What up, everybody? This is Double G for PopBlur.com, the 10-Yard Fight NFL Preview Podcast. This is part one. We're going to go over the AFC first, and in addition to KJ and Mike C., who write on PopBlurred, I'm bringing on first a friend of mine who I do other podcasts with of the mixed martial arts and pro wrestling kind. His name is Jason Hagholm. He goes by the name of the Dirty White Boy, and we're going to talk about the AFC East first because he is a Buffalo Bills fan. He is an NFL fan living in Canada, and he loves football, so we're going to talk to him first. And let's just bring him on now. Jason, what's going on?
Oh, not too much, Double G. Before you know it, the season will be in full swing, and I'm sure you will be in Sunday heaven.
Yeah, I mean, the season starts Thursday, and you go right into the Sunday games, and I think there's 2 Monday night games again, and so the NFL really knows how to get their season kicked off. It's like it becomes holiday almost.
It definitely does. I think, the way football is structured, like the past couple weeks, like college officially got started, which, I know you're not too big into the NCAA football, but I enjoy it. And it's, different style, to see a lot of different, teams and sections of the United States you really don't get to see pro teams in. So I get to enjoy it and get to see some close late night games, which is what I like to enjoy as well, more so than, an NFL would. But but this is what I've been waiting for. I've got Canadian University, American college, Canadian football, and now the real deal NFL is about to be underway, and I can't wait, as Bart Scott would say.
All right, so I'm going to talk to you first, and then you're going to leave, and then I'll bring on the other guys. So we're going to talk AFC East. As I said, you're a Bills fan. Your favorite team is in the division that is the land of the New England Patriots, and you guys made a lot of changes this year, specifically head coach, drafted a quarterback. As you look at the team this season, early in the season compared to how they finished last year, do you feel better about the team, or do you kind of feel like they're a little bit in quicksand and on a treadmill?
I'd say around the point of week 2 of the preseason, I felt the team was on an upswing. I do like E.J. Manuel. I think he was a great draft pick. I've seen him make some decisions. Granted, it's preseason, but I think he and certain members of the defenses of the teams he played are taking it like a bit of a real game, and he was making strong decisions with the football. Unfortunately, after week 2, he had injured his knee and needed minor knee surgery, and I'm thankful it was minor knee surgery because if he's not playing most of our games this year, I really, really don't know what I can say for the team. Our backfield is still strong with C.J. Spiller and Fred Jackson. We picked up Chris Hogan as a receiver who, maybe not be a number 1 or anything like that, but I think he's some strong hands. We also drafted a kid from Texas who's got some speed on him. I've seen him against the Colts in the preseason return a kickoff for a touchdown. So the youth movement, I think, is strong in Buffalo. I like our head coach, and I think he's going to bring some interesting schemes because, he's coming from the NCAA, so a lot of intrigue can come from there. However, unfortunately, Kevin Cobb was our other acquisition, and he actually may have to retire from all the concussions he's received in his career. And, that is a little unfortunate because, Cobb, I think, is a strong quarterback, but if he wasn't him being so injury prone is what really hurts him. However, I don't think EJ will even be playing week 1. Our third string quarterback may be getting the reps in week 1 against New England, which is always a death sentence for me as a Bills fan. I don't believe we have beaten New England since week 1 of the 2004 when Lawyer Malloy was cut the last week of this before the season, and then we picked him up, and we had Drew Bledsoe, and it was look at all these Patriots on Buffalo, and then you know what happened? Just nothing.
So lots of early buzz on C.J. Spiller, especially from a fantasy football standpoint. Now, last year he had a pretty solid season, though he only had 207 carries. Fred Jackson had 115. Didn't Jackson get hurt at some point last year as well?
Jackson got hurt week 1. He injured his knee, but it wasn't like majorly severe or anything like that. And he got hurt a couple times in the season, which definitely led CJ to, finally flourish into the running back that they drafted him out of Clemson to be. And I'm, happy to see that he's doing that. I think Fred in the backfield is still a strong presence. I do like us mixing it up with Spiller and Jackson on occasion. If you get EJ in there, he is a bit of a mobile style quarterback, not as much as, a Mike Vick or an RG3 can be, but he is definitely still mobile outside the pocket. I like our running attack a lot. So yes, I noticed that CJ Spiller was like the 6th projected running back to be taken in people's fantasies, and I can totally agree with that because he is going to have to carry a lot of the burden this year, with it being his 4th year in the NFL and a very young team.
So Spiller is. Do you think he's actually going to get the number of carries that, say, an Alfred Morris got last year, just becomes the guy? Or do you think they're still going to salt and pepper with he and Fred Jackson? Because Jackson, I think, Jackson's still good back, but if you look at the average yards per carry, Spiller had 6.0 average yards per carry and Jackson was under 4. So there's a definite big playability that seems to be the difference maker between both guys.
I think they're going to have to sprinkle it up because I like them mixing it up with the speed and prowess that a CJ can bring you, and the veteran kind of style experience, and the speed and a little bit of more of a power style back than CJ would be than Fred is. I really hope we mix it up. I understand why Washington would give Alfred Morris more carries because, a 6th round pick that, nobody saw coming. And he was just a guy that really helped RG3 a lot last year. So, I could see if they wanted to give CJ more carries, I'd be okay with it. But I like the 1-2 combination.
All right. So I'm basing this off of the ESPN.com depth chart. Obviously, Stevie Johnson is your number 1 receiver. TJ Graham, as the number 2, last year caught 31 balls, a little on the small side. What's the buzz on him?
Well, obviously Stevie is our number 1 receiver, and even today I saw a quote from him saying that no Patriot can stop him, which... See, I love Stevie, but every time we've been in a close game, he's the one that kind of fucks it up for the Bills. There was a game about 2 seasons ago where Fitzpatrick hit Stevie wide open in the end zone against the Steelers, and he dropped the ball. And he dropped the ball in a close game we had a couple years ago against the Jets. Basically, our receiving corps are just a bunch of young guys. So, it's going to have to be Stevie leading them, and the young guys just going out there to really make plays. That's the buzz I get so far to Buffalo. But Buffalo, they do have a lot of confidence, saying, this is the best receiving corps in the NFL. And while that's definitely needs to be proven, the potential is there for that to be true.
Now, from a defensive standpoint, last year you guys were in the bottom 10 of the NFL, I would say, in how many points you gave up against other teams. What did you guys do defensively, and how do you feel about the defense?
I feel okay about the defense. I think our defensive line is going to be a lot better. I saw Marcel Darius actually, have that fire that he had back in college and why we drafted him. I think Mario Williams is going to have a much better season. He's, I think, changed his stance and, been able to get a better pass rush at the offensive lines to make plays. The thing that really, really did worry me was Jarius Byrd, who's, didn't want to be the franchise player, and Buffalo and him had this whole long, drawn-out process, and finally, just a couple weeks ago, he signed it, but Byrd and the Buffalo Bills organization are not on good terms, so that really does worry me, but I know Byrd will go out there and make plays. Our secondary is strong, and they did just cut veteran cornerback Brian Scott, who I thought was a great presence to have out there. So it seems to me that a lot of it is just like a youth movement going on, especially now, even on the defensive side of the ball.
All right, so let's go over the rest of the division. I think it's quite obvious that the Pats are probably being picked by 99% of prognosticators here. Do you feel the same? Is it sort of the Pats' division to lose here?
I think it really is because, even though New England lost a lot of players, like basically their offense, they lost. They did do one thing right, I think. They got Danny Amendola, who, if he can stay healthy, can be that massive, massive threat that Wes Welker was. And the thing is, with Belichick, they've won championships with nobodies before other than having Tom Brady at quarterback. So it's really their division to lose. I mean, obviously we're about to get to it, but only like maybe one team can really, really give the Pats a run for the money.
So Miami is kind of like another. You see a lot of people, here's the sleeper team for the playoffs, Miami with Tannehill and stuff. Do you think the Bills could actually beat out Miami for the second slot in that division?
I think they could. I think more so because the moves they made, didn't really hurt the team in the pocketbook. Miami spent up like $1 bajillion on like defensive players. I mean, they picked up Brent Grimes from Atlanta, which I think is a huge pickup. They picked up Ellerbe from the Baltimore Ravens, just coming off a Super Bowl win and was supposed to be the guy to fill Ray Lewis's role on the Ravens. And of course, the Mike Wallace signing is huge offensively, but they did sign, they signed Dustin Keller at tight end, but he's gone for the year after that, unfortunate hit he took in the preseason game for the Dolphins against Houston. The thing with me is, I don't know if in this division or even in this league you can just buy players and think to win a championship, because I just went through this in baseball. The Blue Jays just bought everyone and they're 18 and a half games back. So I've seen this story play out. If you think you're just going to throw money around and make it rain, you're not going to make it rain in the win columns. I think the Bills, just on the guts and determination, could probably outdo the Miami Dolphins. And really the one thing that helps is because Miami no longer has Reggie Bush, who didn't have that many big games as a Dolphin, but every time he played Buffalo, it was just something got clicked with him.
You said make it rain, and somewhere out there Pac-Man Jones' ears just perked up.
Well, that was the most devastating finishing move, I think, in TNA tag team history.
Okay, so you kind of feel like the Bills have a shot. Miami is probably going to be there. Jets, did the Jets have a chance at all with their just awful quarterback situation?
I don't think they really have a chance, but in somehow, some way, they're winning games like to end the preseason and stuff like that. I don't understand what the Jets would do. I mean, the Jets are a disaster. So Geno Smith was the quarterback Buffalo was supposed to take, and thank God we didn't take him because he's awful so far. Sanchez, he's going to be hurt and out of it. I don't even know who's starting for them week one, considering they cut, probably the best quarterback on their depth chart, Greg McElroy, the former Alabama quarterback, who, even won them a couple games last year. I don't understand what they're doing there. I really think the Jets could have one of the worst seasons they've had since they went 1-15 back in 96?
Yeah. Okay, so now let's talk Super Bowl predictions here. I think if gun to my head, I have to take the Niners. I can't do like a reverse jinx or something and not take them. In the AFC, I think a lot of people are saying Denver or New England. I'll probably go New England, but there seem to be 3 pretty darn good teams in the NFC, maybe 4, and 2 clear teams in the AFC. Then if you throw Houston in there, then maybe there's 3. I know you've been a fan of Houston in the past. Do you think outside of Seattle, San Francisco, Denver, New England, Green Bay, Houston, Atlanta, are there any teams outside of those who actually have a shot to make it to the Super Bowl?
Well, I said this actually moments after last year's Super Bowl ended. I think the San Francisco 49ers are the team that's going to get back there. They are basically a lot of the same unit as they were last year. Plus, they've got even better at some positions. They got Anquan Bolden in a trade because of Flacco's ridiculous contract, which, thanks, I'm sure they're saying to Baltimore. The one thing that does suck is they won't have Crabtree for a majority of the season because that was Colin Kaepernick's favorite for target. But it's not like he doesn't have guys that can, like other guys to hit, like Vernon Davis or even Frank Gore in the backfield is going to be big. And I really like your team's defense. I think it really, to me, that division is, down to Seattle and San Francisco, and I wouldn't even be surprised if somehow, some way, both those teams made the NFC Championship game. Atlanta, I feel like last year was their time, and they blew it against, almost blew it against Seattle, and almost blew it against San Francisco. So for the NFC, I really, really like the San Francisco 49ers. And I really hope Kaepernick does really, really well this year because I got him on my fantasy. So I'm really hoping that a lot of Kaepernicking will be going on, especially week 1 against the Pack. And I've seen some people say that they think the Super Bowl is going to be Green Bay and Denver. And I don't buy into that. I don't think the Packers are going to be that good this year. I think they've lost a lot. Like Aaron Rodgers lost his number 1 target in Greg Jennings. I think there's going to be some surprise, teams there. I don't think the Broncos are going to be that good down the stretch because if the Broncos clearing out, their division, which they should, and have an amazing season and get a bye, that's actually statistically terrible for Peyton Manning. Only like 1 playoff win when that has happened. He's done the best in that year. They were the wild card team, and they ended up winning the Super Bowl. So for the AFC, you got to look. I don't really know. Maybe Houston. It could be Houston's time. They've been to the playoffs 2 seasons in a row. And the first time was they got an unlucky break. Didn't have a starter. They had a 3rd string leading them. And
was that TJ Yates?
That was TJ Yates. And then last year it was, basically, up against a better New England team that just had their number.
Yeah, they got smoked.
Yeah, they got smoked in the regular season and then, a little bit smoked. Outplayed, I'd say, in the preseason or in the playoff game. So it could be Houston's time. I think J.J. Watt is so amped for it. The Texans should do really well. I would actually think it'd be a pretty interesting Super Bowl, Houston and San Francisco. But I think if I have to be smart here, I think it'll be the 49ers and the Patriots, much like you.
So we have a very similar prediction there. Okay, so should be fun, and I may try to get back in touch with you, whether it's for predictions or whether it's for games or whether it's for other podcast segments. So I appreciate you hanging out, and I will link the Twitter if anybody wants to follow you on Twitter to listen to your NFL commentary and MMA commentary. But yeah, so appreciate you hanging out, and we're going to hang up with Jason, and we're going to get to KJ and Mike. We're back talking the NFL on the Pop Blurred radio podcast here. We went from talking about the AFC East with my buddy Jason, a.k.a. the Dirty White Boy, and we're going to talk to a clean white dude, KJ, and also Mike Cunningham, who you've heard on Blurred Radio in the past. He's been on the podcast with the other guys, with Big Money and Zach and all those other guys. So welcome to you both, and I appreciate you taking some time out so we can kind of get a little bit of sports audio up on the website. We're very much we have a lot of podcasts that deal with music and pop culture and really deep music opinion. So I'm glad we could do some stuff with football, and I appreciate you guys being on board.
Yeah, thanks.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me, guys.
All right. So what we're going to do is Jason talked about, the AFC East, and he gave his picks. And KJ is a Indianapolis Colts fan, and I'll let him tell the short story version of why he's a Colts fan and he lives in the state of Washington. And then I will tackle the NFC West. So KJ will tackle the AFC South. I'll tackle the NFC West. Mike will tackle the AFC North, and we'll kind of just break down what we think is going to happen. Those are the divisions that we keep up with the most because those are where our teams lie. And then we'll just kind of go through the who we think is going to win the other divisions. and who also we think has the best shot at winning the Super Bowl. So I want to start with KJ because KJ has actually helped me write the 10-yard fight column. He wrote several columns last year, and together we did the playoff preview stuff. And now that that I know Mike is a diehard football fan, we're going to get him involved in the football stuff over this season too. So KJ, can you've broken this down to me before? But you are a diehard Indianapolis Colts fan. You have a Peyton Manning obsession. He is now the quarterback of the Denver Broncos, and then you live in Washington. So how does that whole thing work for you?
Well, it started, I think it was back in '04 or '03 when Manning led my fantasy football team to a championship. And then I just, followed him and really liked, all those goofy things he does at the line of scrimmage. Yelling at the defensive players and moving guys around, and I guess just kind of fell in love with him there. And so, just became a big Colts fan. And I grew up actually in San Diego and wasn't a big football fan. Moved to Hawaii, there's no football there. Moved up in Washington, the Seahawks weren't any good. So it wasn't until I got into fantasy sports that I just started just following all different players. And then, like I said, my man crush is Peyton Manning, so I started following the Colts. And then after he left, I didn't know what I was going to do. But I liked Andrew Luck. Watched him his senior year at Stanford, and was it a senior or junior year? Anyway, his last year at Stanford, and thought, well, this is still good, and Reggie Wayne's still there, and so I found myself rooting hard for the Colts, and like, hey, I guess I'm a Colts fan. So, I've kind of liked them now for just about 10 years. That happened fast.
So
yeah.
So let's break down this division, and Mike, when KJ's done, talking about it, we'll throw in our 2 cents about who we think's going to win the division. But you guys, your Colts, I think surprised a lot of people last year by how well they did, and we talked about this in the 10-yard fight columns, just in the playoff stuff. And then, the team that has been pretty dominant of late in that division are the Houston Texans. Do the Colts have what it takes? Have what it takes to take down the Texans this year, or do you see a little bit of regression from what happened last year?
No, I think it'll kind of stay the same. I won't go into more of my playoff picks. I'll wait till we do that later. But I like the Texans, and I like the Texans to win the division. I think the Colts still make the playoffs, and they'll either improve or just about stay the same. I think they improved on defense during the offseason and the running game. And then I'm interested to see how Pep Hamilton, who was the Stanford offensive coordinator when Luck was there, to see what he does to the team. But, the bottom 2 teams, the Titans and the Jaguars, I just don't think are any good. The Titans might be okay. It sounds like they improved their offensive line to kind of help Chris Johnson. But the Jaguars, they're probably going to lock up the number 1 pick. Them or the Raiders, I guess. But, so I think it's the Texans, Colts. And I just think the Colts, I think they're going to stay about where they're at. And, I think they'll improve, but I don't think they can take out the Texans yet.
So one of the things that Stanford did a whole lot when Luck was there was they ran the hell out of the football.
Right. Luck
threw a lot last year. They did not have a strong running game. Is Ballard still the guy?
And they got Ahmad Bradshaw from the Giants.
That's
and I
right.
guess
That's right.
Yeah, he's supposed to be their power guy, and I think he's going to be like their main guy. I think he didn't play during the preseason, but he'll be playing now, so he'll be their power guy. And I think that's what they want to do is run the ball a lot, and so that's going to be kind of interesting because I think they've got Reggie Wayne, they've got T.Y. Hilton. And Darius Hayward-Bay, which should be interesting. So they should have decent speed on the receivers and then just some power back. So it'll be kind of fun to watch.
And you do have 2 of the most dog meat teams in the NFL in your division, so that should be 4 wins there. And then you only got to win, maybe 6 more games to get back in that playoff hunt. So
and I was looking at their schedule, and it doesn't look too bad. There's some hard games. There's some games. I know Denver comes there. Seattle comes there. But a lot of the games are at home, the harder ones. So, I think they'll be okay.
And your team plays my team week 3, September 22nd.
Oh, that's right. They go to San Francisco.
In San Francisco. So Andrew Luck gets a little bit of a homecoming there.
Yeah, that'll be interesting.
Yeah. So, all right. So, Mike, thoughts on KJ's predictions?
I can't really deviate from that very much. I really don't think that the Jaguars or the Titans are going to show a lot of improvement this year. I was impressed with Chris Johnson's bounce back season last year. I think he'll continue to be a big weapon for the Titans, but I really just don't think they have the answer at the quarterback position right now. Jacksonville, again, that franchise just seems to be going nowhere fast. I don't think Blaine Gabbert is the answer there. Of course, you've got I do think the Colts are going to improve a little bit this season. I do like the Ahmad Bradshaw pickup, assuming that his foot holds up throughout the season. I do think he's a bit of an injury risk. Bruce Arians, who actually was the offensive coordinator but also coached the team last year during the absence of their head coach fighting cancer. His move to Arizona could hurt them. I know, being a Steelers fan, he was our offensive coordinator for several years here under Mike Tomlin, helped the team get to 2 Super Bowls. Everybody really wanted to run him out of town here because they thought he threw too much. But now that he's gone, I think people are missing him a little bit because our offense doesn't have quite the dynamic it had in the passing game that it had he was here. So that might be a bit of a step back, but I do like the balance for the Colts. I like the Texans. I can't help but think that I feel like they've peaked out without making any real noise in the playoffs, if that makes any sense. Like, they spent all those years sort of developing these core skill players on offense and finally getting to the point where they got to the playoffs a couple of years ago, won a playoff game, kind of repeated that pattern last year. I just don't know if I'm wondering if they've ceilinged out without getting any further, without getting to an AFC championship game or a Super Bowl. And they're maybe going to plateau or even regress a little bit this year. I do think, however, they've still got, with Arian Foster, Andre Johnson still has the ability to be effective. They'll probably win that division, but I could see the Colts making it very interesting this year.
Yeah, I think that Houston, Indy, definitely the top 2 teams. What I worry about, though, is Indy had a lot of situations that happened for them favorably that, you could say has to do with luck and I'm not talking about Andrew Luck, but actual luck.
Yeah.
The thing that is glaring about their season last year is they gave up 30 more points than they scored and still went 11-5. Some of that has to do with the teams in their division, but really, maybe they were really an 8-8 team that had a few bounces go their way in certain games. But I think the evolution of Andrew Luck is going to be something that's really fun to see. And even if they do take a slight step back record-wise, I think they're on the forward track with the franchise and what they're doing there. So very much agree with KJ. Just a couple of guys. We had some guys who also write for Poplar send in their picks. Jeff says the Colts are going to win the division, but he has Houston as a wild card team, and Tristan has it Houston without the Colts making the playoffs. So let's start now. Let's move over to Mike's division. He of the AFC North, and we were talking a little bit before we got on and started recording. His Steelers. He was saying how he was a little worried because they didn't really get their free agents back, and they stuttered in the preseason, going 0-4. Not that means much at all, but. Do you guys, is this Steelers team gonna be a good bounce back? Is this gonna be a bounce back season for you guys? Being that Baltimore probably takes a step back as well. Cleveland and Cincinnati, though, they seem to be coming up a little bit. How do you feel about your Steelers season this year?
Not good, Garrett. Not good at all. we're obviously extremely spoiled around here. Steelers fans have high expectations. Really going back over the last 20 years, we've won a ton of division titles with different quarterbacks. We finally have our franchise guy in Ben, but you look at the first 5 or 6 years of his career, they had a good window to contend or win titles all during that time. And, at some point with the salary cap, every team has to kind of take a step or two backwards before they can take a couple steps forward, no matter how well they're managed. And, I think the Steelers had a lot of big losses in free agency, a lot of veteran players who have been sort of core parts of their team for years that left. Casey Hampton, obviously, their nose tackle, he was in the twilight of his career. He's gone. James Harrison, who, has been battling injuries the last couple of years, but in my opinion still has the ability to play at a Pro Bowl level if he's in the right system. He left and went to Cincinnati in the offseason. Rashard Mendenhall, who really was on sort of a downward spiral the last couple of years and also battled injury last year. He went out to Arizona. And you look at the guys that they replaced these guys with. They took Jarvis Jones, a linebacker out of Georgia, in the first round, and Le'Veon Bell, running back out of Michigan State, in the second round. Both of these guys are hurt. They both got injured in the preseason. Neither one of them seems like something that's going to keep them out for the duration of the year, but they're both maybe 5-6 week injuries. I think the Steelers have a week 5 bye. Wouldn't be out of the question to not see either of those guys until week 6. So I think when you take all those things into consideration, the one favorable thing the Steelers have for them, they do have Ben Roethlisberger. Is he going to stay healthy? Always a big question mark. Terrible offensive line, has been sacked more than any other quarterback the last 5 years. If he's in, he can win games for them by himself. But when you look at it all together, they also have a very soft schedule. But I don't anticipate they're going to bounce back this year. I think that they're going to be a sub-500 team. I said 6-10 in the spring. I'm willing to say 7-9 now, just because I do think they're playing a soft third-place schedule. But I just think that they're kind of in a rebuilding mode right now, and maybe they'll be able to put together one more team during Ben's career here, where they can maybe make one more Super Bowl run, kind of the way Elway did at the end of his career in Denver. But right now is not that time, in my opinion.
The thing that I look back at that team last year, and if you guys could have put the ball in the end zone just a couple more times, I mean, we might have seen 10-6 instead of 8-8. You guys had a really solid defense. Just from a yards perspective, passing defense and rushing defense. You guys didn't give up a whole lot of yards, but you just didn't get the ball in the end zone enough. Now they cut Dwyer. Which was, I mean, to me, as an outsider, I was surprised. Who's going to run the football for you guys?
No, a lot of people around here were very surprised by that as well, and disappointed in a lot of cases. My opinion is that Tomlin has been down on Dwyer really since last training camp when he came in fat. And I had heard and seen that he was in really good shape. He had a pretty good preseason. He caught a good touchdown pass in the third game and was the most productive back, but I think he was in Tomlin's doghouse for whatever reason. They did trade for Felix Jones, interestingly enough, from Philly. If you'll remember, he was a first-round draft pick for the Cowboys only 4 or 5 years ago, played at Arkansas with Darren McFadden at the same time, showed flashes of, explosive brilliance in his first 2 years at Dallas, but never really settled into that feature back role. But when he came over, people were surprised because a lot of people thought he wasn't even going to make the team in Philly. So I don't think he's going to be the guy who handles the load or totes the ball. Isaac Redman is going to start the season. He's about a 4-year veteran with the team. He started off backing up Rashard Mendenhall, was an effective power back. Last year, he was expected to kind of carry the torch and be the starting running back, and injuries derailed his success a little bit. But ultimately, Le'Veon Bell, that draft pick I mentioned from Michigan State, I think he's the guy that they really expect to come in, pick up where Rashard Mendenhall left off 2 or 3 years ago as the feature back, and take the bulk of the carries with Redmond backing him up. LaRod Stevens-Howling, who they signed from Arizona as a free agent this year, being the third down back, and Felix Jones playing something of a mop-up role. But again, we don't know how long LaDavian Bell is going to be out. He's got a foot injury that they're saying isn't very serious, but I've heard 5 to 6 weeks, and the guy hasn't, carried the ball other than a couple carries in the preseason to this point, so we don't really know what we're going to get out of him. But he's definitely the guy that they've tapped as the running back of the future.
All right, so break it down. Who wins the division? How do you see the rest of the chips fall? Do we get a wild card out of this division as well?
You know what? As much as it pains me to say so, I think the Cincinnati Bengals are ripe to win this division this year. They're a team on the come. They've got arguably the best wide receiver in the AFC in A.J. Green. Dalton I don't think he's ever going to be a Pro Bowl caliber quarterback, but he's shown improvement in each of his first 2 years, and if he was going to take a step back, I think he would have had a sophomore slump. I only see him getting better and more comfortable this year as he's in more big games and has more must-win situations, as he had last year playing at Pittsburgh late in the season, winning that game. That basically got them to the playoffs. They've got a really solid defense. Ben-Jarvis Green-Ellis is, a solid back, not a burner, but he can tote the rock and hang on to the ball. I like them to win the division. I don't like any wild cards coming out of the AFC North. Actually, I think the Ravens are going to have a Super Bowl hangover year. I think they'll finish in second, somewhere around 500, maybe even have a 9-7 season. But I think they're going to miss the playoffs this year. They lost a lot in free agency and to retirement last year. I mean, they played roulette with Flacco 2 years ago when he was entering the last year of his contract because he wanted an extension then, and they weren't sold on him as a franchise quarterback despite all the playoff games he had won for them up to that point. And so, of course, in that last year of his contract, he goes and wins the Super Bowl. So they had to pay him way more than they otherwise would have. As a result, they lost a lot of free agents and a lot of veteran players, and I just don't think they've got they don't have any wideouts anymore. I mean, other than Torrey Smith, they lost all their good wideouts from that Super Bowl run. I don't think he has a lot of weapons, and I think their defense is athletic, but is not the Ravens' defense from the early to mid aughts that we think about with those dominant Ravens defenses. And the Browns, are the Browns, man. I mean. They seem to have been making some good moves the last couple of years. I think Trent Richardson could end up being a beast in this league. I don't know how I feel about Whedon as a quarterback. I mean, it feels like a Chris Weinke situation all over again to me.
I think you know how you feel.
I don't know what. I don't know why. If that's a guy who they're going to be able to build around over the next 5 years, like an Andy Dalton,
right,
or any of the number of good quarterbacks who came out last year. So. Of the draft last year, so I don't. They're in the basement. I mean, they don't have enough. But I think it's going to be. I think the Bengals will win the division. Ravens second, Steelers third, and the Browns will be in their usual position in last place.
All right, I predicted every team in that division goes 8-8. We got to go down to the week 17 to figure out who's the team that actually wins it and goes to the playoffs.
Yeah, no, I definitely don't think it's going to be a strong division this year. And like I said, I know as a Steelers fan, looking at their schedule, it's extremely soft. And that's the one thing I'm sort of taking umbrage in. But I don't like the Ravens or the Steelers to be very good this year. And, the Browns just are the Browns, like I said.
KJ?
I have the Bengals winning. I actually think the Ravens might sneak into the last spot in the playoffs just because I couldn't find anybody else that I would pick as number 6. They got Elvis Dumerville. That kind of helps, I guess. But, I mean, they did lose quite a bit. And for some reason, I like the Browns, and I think it's just because I like Trent Richardson. And it's funny that Mike said that, but I wrote that he's going to be a beast this year, and that's exactly what he said. Something about Trent Richardson, I kind of like them, but I did look at the Steelers' schedule, and that's kind of weak. So I actually had Browns Steelers, but I would flip-flop that too. And then, so you guys have won, how many championships between the two of you guys that I'm talking to here? I've won, I think I've got one. I mean, I've only had the Colts in 2006, and that's in all of my sports. I mean, baseball and basketball and football, so I feel kind of like the loser in here.
Well, yeah, Mike's got 6 with the Steelers. Yeah. I've got 5 with the Niners. But then from a baseball standpoint, Mike's team hasn't won a title since the 70s.
Yeah.
That's right, 79.
And I have 2, recent World Championships with the Giants. So,
And I'm a Padre fan.
Yeah,
I'm a Mariner fan.
We've been pretty spoiled. 2008 was a pretty magical year because we won the Super Bowl and the Pens won the Stanley Cup.
That's right.
They're third. So, we've been, from a football and hockey standpoint, we've been spoiled around here. We've had probably maybe the 2 greatest players in the world play on our hockey team at different points in the last 25 years in Mario Lemieux and Sidney Crosby. So Pittsburgh's a big hockey city too. But the Pirates, they've been irrelevant for a long time, but it's great to see. We have a beautiful ballpark. It's great to see a good team finally in it because they're making a run right now, and it looks like they're at least going to sneak into a wild card spot and maybe win the division. They're in first place as we speak right now on Labor Day. So yeah, we're spoiled. There's no question. And that's why when the Steelers do suck, I try to be realistic about it because people around here are absolutely insane, as you can imagine. It's like an Alabama football situation. They think it's like the birthright for the Steelers to win the Super Bowl every year, and you gotta be happy with when they play well and realize that they're going to be bad from time to time.
I told my Seahawk buddies I was talking to a Niner guy and a Steeler guy, I'd get my butt kicked. And I got all Seahawks buddies, and they don't like you guys.
Yeah, I know. I get it, and then for whatever reason, they're the Seahawks and the Niners. There's a lot of bad blood, even though we've never really had a rivalry. But I guess
that's I was kind of wondering, and I was booed when I chose Colin Kaepernick at my fantasy draft. Everyone booed me, like 15 guys and gals just booing me. I was like, what? He was the best available. Come on.
You know what, though? I can tell you, even being on the East Coast, and we always have a big-time East Coast bias, but in my opinion, that Seattle Niners series, if there's 2 games I have no emotional investment and I want to watch this year, it's the 2 times they play each other. Because, those are 2 teams, not to segue too early, but I feel like those are 2 teams that could both contend for the Super Bowl this year.
Yeah.
And they play week 2 on NBC, so we will get a very early look at both teams in a couple weeks here. So, all right. So Jeff took the Bengals, and as well as Tristan, but Tristan had Baltimore making the wild card. So seems like we're pretty similar across the board here with both divisions. Now let's quickly, we heard Jason, Dirty White Boy, talk about the AFC East, but I want to give you guys a chance to say, who you guys think is the top team. I'm assuming everyone thinks the Patriots are going to win that division like they do every year. Is there anybody else in that division that you think has a shot to make some noise? And let's go KJ first.
Okay, I kind of wanted to pick the Bills, but I just don't think they're ready yet. I don't know who the quarterback is. EJ Manuel's kind of dealing with some injury, but other than that, that division's weak. Other than that team that plays near Boston.
Yeah, well, I agree, and it's funny to me because I've noticed that a lot of people, Miami's kind of like a sexy pick this year to overtake the Patriots in the AFC East, and I just personally don't see that at all. I think Ryan Tannehill looks pretty good. He's got the potential to be a good quarterback in the league if he continues to develop. I could tell you from having Mike Wallace the last 3 years that he's all or nothing. He's a big play wideout. He's gonna, and that's not only from play to play or game to game. That's throughout the course of the season. He's usually putting up Pro Bowl numbers for half the season and then disappears for half the season. So he's a guy that if he can get behind people, he could take it to the house every time, but he's not going to move the chains for you. So and they lost Reggie Bush, which I think is an underrated loss. So I don't think Miami's even going to make the playoffs. I think the Patriots are going to win the division again, even without Wes Welker. I hate those guys, but Tom Brady's going to find and Darth Belichick are going to find a way to get it done, and it's going to be the same old story in the AFC East.
Yeah, the Patriots, I believe, were Peter King's Super Bowl winning squad. So
Yeah, I saw that.
Even with the loss of Aaron Hernandez, Gronk is hurt. No Wes Welker. They have Wes Welker 2.0 if he could stay healthy. Danny Amendola, but a lot of faith in Tom Brady to continue to move the football no matter who is catching it. I know there's a lot of hype on. I guess there's a lot of, I would say, fantasy football hype more than regular football hype on their backup tight end. Zach Sudfield?
Sunfield or Sudfield, yeah.
So, so I mean, I agree. It's Patriots' division to lose. I think the Bills, of course, with Manuel, they basically have like three rookie quarterbacks, and that is that's not gonna do it for them. Without any safety valve, back there. Poor Cobb got injured, and it looks like his career's over. Like that. That was a bummer. It was a bummer when any of these guys get hurt like that. But yeah, I mean, it's the Pats, and I guess Miami's going to be okay. I think they probably are a little, maybe a year away or two from actually competing for a wild card at least. But there's a lot of fantasy football hype on Lamar Miller. Lots of people saying, just for fantasy purposes, let's Lamar Miller over Daniel Thomas. We've seen what Daniel Thomas can do already. So, Pats for me as well. And for Jeff and Tristan, of course, Pats for both teams. And moving on to the AFC West, which, because of who the quarterback is of the Denver Broncos, I'm sure KJ is going to be keeping an eye on that division. To me, this is very much like the AFC East in that I think there's a clear team that's clearly above and beyond the other teams, but there is a team in Kansas City with a starting quarterback who I know very well, being that I watched him for his entire career, in Alex Smith, and there's a little bit of buzz about Kansas City. The Raiders are probably going to be one of the worst teams in the league. I have lots of Raider family, cousins and stuff who root for the Raiders, and today I asked them, I said, so what's up with the team? Can you get 5 wins out of that team? And they both said, the two specific cousins I talked to today both said, how about we just tank? That would be for best. So there's not a lot of hope in Oakland. And San Diego had been good for so long. And I think they were even a few Super Bowl a few prognosticated picks for Super Bowl last year, and they just had such a terrible season. So is it Denver for everybody else? KJ, is it just Denver? Do you see Kansas City sneaking up on them at all?
No, I can't. Well, no. I wanted to pick the Chiefs as the number 6. I could think them. You could think that they maybe could slip into the playoffs. I like Andy Reid, but other than that, I don't really see anyone taking it over the Broncos for the top spot. So, no. I mean, and they lost Dumerville, and they're going to lose Von Miller, and so that kind of sucks. But still, the division's weak. The rest of the way down. And,
that does worry me because they right out of the gate they are home against Baltimore, and that's the Thursday night game, which really kicks off the NFL. And then they play at the Giants in week 2, and this is an odd numbered season, so the New York Giants may very well be back in the hunt. But then, they do get Oakland, so that's a game that they could probably easily win. They have Philly at home, at Dallas. So first 5 weeks, and then they have the dog meet Jacksonville Jaguars. So Von Miller is able to come back against Indianapolis in week 7. They get one of the best defensive players in the NFL back. So there's going to be, I think that's going to be the thing to watch with them is, those first 6 weeks, how do they do? And then before they get their big player back, but I'm with you. I think Denver is clearly ahead of the class. I don't believe in Alex Smith as much as a lot of other people do. What do you think, Mike?
You know what? It's funny you guys mentioned that. I'm on the bandwagon. I actually have Kansas City as my last wild card team in the AFC this year. I like Alex Smith there. There's just something about the fact that he did what he did with San Francisco in the playoffs 2 years ago and then got benched midway through the season last year that leads me to believe that he's going to have that it's a cliche, but that proverbial chip on his shoulder this year to want to prove himself as a starting quarterback in the league. And who better to do that with than Andy Reid, a guy who's, developed so many good quarterbacks, gave Michael Vick a renaissance in the league, knows how to call plays. They've got some good stuff there. I mean, people forget that Kansas City went to the playoffs, I believe, 2 years ago. They had a ton of 3 years ago. They had a ton of injuries 2 years ago, which was a big part of the reason Todd Haley got fired. And Matt Castle never panned out. I mean, he proved that 10-6 season with New England was because of Belichick and his system rather than him actually being a good quarterback. So I think with Alex Smith there, kind of a dual threat guy who's probably not going to make a lot of mistakes. You might want to kill me for saying that, Garrett. But, they've got – and Jamal Charles. I mean, if he could stay healthy, he's a guy who can rush for 1,500 yards and break it at any time. Dwayne Bowe, I love him. I mean, he's a big wideout. Got a lot of yardage in garbage time last year because they were playing in garbage time the whole time. But, just got a new contract, can move the chains. I don't know. Maybe it's just because I want something new to happen, and I feel like there's a lot of chalk in the AFC this year. But I like the Chiefs to get that wild card. And obviously, I think the Broncos are going to win the division. I think they're going to be even better this year if that's possible. I like Monty Ball as a running back for them, as an upgrade over no Sean Moreno and sort of the staple of backs they used last year. I think they're actually going to be a team that could very likely represent the AFC in the Super Bowl.
Well, let me give you my little opinion, which is some of it is going to be a little biased because I did see Alex Smith, and I will say that as badly as Alex Smith played at the beginning of his career, I do feel like he found whatever it was those last 2 years. A lot of it had to do with Harbaugh. Some of it had to do with the fact that he didn't have a new offensive coordinator. Because he had one every single year of his career. The one success that he had with Norv Turner, and then Norv leaves, and then they bring in all these other guys. So there is something to consistency and planning and predictability to where he seems to be comfortable in those situations. Now, this isn't that. He's with a new team. He's with a new coach, new offensive coordinator, new offensive system. Now, I very much agree with you that Andy Reid is a good person for Alex Smith to go to. I think he will be able to get Alex to believe in himself very much like Harbaugh did. Like that's like such a small part of it, but in being such a small part of it, I think it meant a lot to Alex to finally have a guy say, you know what, you're my guy. Like, you can throw a pick and don't look over your shoulder. We're not bringing in all the bad quarterbacks that the 49ers had backing him up. So confidence is a big thing with him now. Here's the thing for me is I think it's all about Jamal Charles. The reason why Alex Smith was able to move the ball a lot of the time is because, when you're 2nd and 5, 2nd and 3, 3rd and 2 all the time, you're going to be able to complete a healthy amount of passes because your offense is putting the defense on the defensive. And when the Niners are running 1st and 2nd down and just getting chunks and chunks of yards, it took a lot of pressure off of Alex Smith. He didn't have a lot of 3rd and longs with the way that the Niners played. So Jamal Charles is going to have a big part of that. And he may have rushed for the quietest 1,500 yards ever last year. And part of that is because they were 2-14. So the other reason why I don't have them penciled in as a wild card is because they're going to have to do something like, probably 7 or 8 games better than they did last year. They were 2-14 last year. So can they? I mean, that's a big jump for a franchise who made 2 significant changes, but they still gave up 425 points and only put 211 on the board. So is Alex Smith representative of over 200 more points, this year, or over 150 more points? I don't know that to be true. I think he's going to need a year to really sink his teeth in there. And what I hope is that, he has a solid year, and that I hope next year, as a former 49er fan, and he's our former quarterback, I do hope that he figures it out and can have a second year. But I think if he does, it's going to be next year. It's not going to be this year. I see them playing well, but I don't see them being 8 or 7 games better than they were last year. So that's my Alex Smith thing, and people can take that for what it's worth. And that's the end of part 1 of the 10-Yard Fight NFL season preview for 2013. We will put up part 2 tomorrow, going over the NFC, and we'll also have our Super Bowl picks, as well as a little bit of fantasy football fun and goodness. So we will see you tomorrow on popblurred.com.